call the Brattleboro Planning Commission meeting to order. This is a joint meeting with the Brattleboro Development Review Board, and it's Wednesday, September 5th. So the first item is announcements. I have an announcement. As chair, I received the Act 250 notices of, this was a notice of jurisdictional determination for Groundworks Collaborative, and they're restoring the drop-in center building on 60 South Main Street and the one next door. And the Act 250 jurisdictional determination said that an Act 250 permit was needed because it was within 3 miles of the Lamplighter development, which is up on Putney Road. It is 3 miles, but that was a Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust activity at which the Groundworks Collaborative is just providing services to the population. So I wrote a letter suggesting that they revisit their jurisdictional determination because I think it was made in error.
Yeah. I think they're a little more than that.
Well,
I know.
Yeah. We haven't had a response yet.
we haven't
but
had a
it's-
response, but I also encourage the Drop-In Center and the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust to write similar letters because it's their,
Yeah.
it's their stuff.
Yes.
Anything else, Sue?
Just a couple of announcements. We have on Monday, Devin Coleman, the state historic architect, architectural historian, is coming down. He's going to have a discussion about the certified local government, which we have talked about in the past at planning commission meetings. It's in our town plan. It's a program where we have to undertake certain activities, but we have some available, there's some grant funding available for historic preservation activities. So he's going to talk briefly about that. We can then further decide if we want to pursue certified local government. There's a handful in the state, so annually there's money available for historic preservation activities. And then he's also going to talk, and this is kind of the pertinence to the DRB, we now have the historic resource overlay. You've seen several applications come through, particularly in the residential historic districts. I think we're probably all pretty comfortable in the downtown or, looking at architectural features of commercial block buildings. But maybe you're not so comfortable about what are some of the architectural details on these residential homes. So we're going to do a walking tour. You can meet us at the sidewalk. You don't have to come to both, but if you're going to do the walking tour, that's going to be at 6 in front of the Canal Street School. And we'll walk the Clark Canal and Horton Homestead, so it won't be more than an hour. And he's going to point out features and kind of talk a little bit about those districts. So that's Monday night. If the weather's really bad, we'll just do a slideshow and stay at the Municipal Center. So hope you can join us. We had it on the earlier side because he is coming from.
You said meeting 6 at Canal Street School.
6 at Canal Street, 5.
But 5 here.
5 here. Yeah, I have.
Here at the library.
Oh, no, the Municipal Center.
Okay.
Sorry.
The select board meeting room.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Sue,
Yeah.
I was hoping that he would be all right if we do go out on that tour. I've reserved equipment from
Yeah,
BCTV.
That's great.
And I would put a wireless mic on him,
Okay.
and I would come with a camera.
I will check with him. I
Yeah.
don't foresee that being
But the
a
idea
problem.
was that it would be something that the general public, who might not be able to be
Yeah.
on the tour, might be interested, so.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
The
That'd be
equipment
great.
is reserved, and hopefully we'll get,
Especially because it's Rosh Hashanah.
because it's what?
It's
Rosh
Rosh
Hashanah.
Hashanah.
Oh, okay, yes.
Wow, we reserved this seat back then. Yeah, that's great. Thank
So
you.
I just wanted to, if that hadn't been,
Yeah.
yeah.
I had heard
presume-
it.
I presume we could, we would
Yeah,
videotape that.
I talked to Sue about
Yeah.
it.
Okay, but we would
I should
presumably
give
also
him that heads up.
videotape the 5 o'clock
Yeah.
presentation as well.
That's great. Another announcement, Planning Commission, we talked about a petroleum inventory. I sent out the RFP to our pre-qualified consultants. Only one responded. but it was perfectly adequate. So Sanborn Head is working on that. We should have an inventory of potential petroleum sites for kind of the main, 142 Canal Street, downtown, Putney Road, Route 9 by the end of the month. So just something maybe we can work off for brownfield sites.
Is
Do
this
you mind
for
if I ask you-
environmental? Is this for environmental?
Brownfield
cleanup?
assessment. Yeah, I mean, it's just an inventory of maybe where historic uses, maybe where there were tanks on the site. It's not, there's no testing involved for anybody.
Yeah.
But it's identifying sites that we have a pool of money that can be used.
Yeah.
So these aren't, when it says petroleum inventory, this isn't like an inventory of the infrastructure of what exists for like gas stations or things.
No.
These are for previously existing.
Yeah, kind of, yeah, I mean, the current gas stations will show up on it for sure, but no, it's more looking at it for historical purposes.
I found that very interesting to think about how much petroleum infrastructure there is in town.
Yeah.
Is that the right term?
Yeah,
Maybe not infrastructure.
It's,
yeah.
that term kind of has a different intent,
Yeah.
because this is really to clean up
Okay.
abandoned,
Yeah,
Okay.
petroleum-based contaminated sites.
But it will give the town a good overview of what they're dealing with.
yeah, of what's out there.
What's out
And it's not really for the town purposes, it's just if, say you're a property owner and you're looking at one of these sites,
Mhm.
if you purchase that property and it's dirty, you're in the chain of liability. So
Yes.
we have a program that could help get you out of it. So it's more just to know, it doesn't, this inventory does not guarantee that anything's there. It's just a suggestion that maybe there was a use on this property that you might want to
It's
look
really,
into.
its purpose is to encourage redevelopment.
Okay.
So does that include that warehouse that is, I can never know the street, that you take to go, you go up the hill.
Elm Street.
Is that Elm Street?
Yeah.
There's this huge gigantic warehouse there that's never, as long as I've been living here, never used for anything.
Is
And
it
it's supposed to
Is
be
that by the-
environmentally really a mess.
Oh, that's the
New
New
England
England
Youth
near
Theater?
New England Youth
Yes.
Theater. That is not a petroleum site,
Oh.
but that has PCB in the brick walls. Like, so the interior was painted with paint that had PCB in it.
Oh,
And
great.
so, yes, it is quite contaminated and it's very expensive to either clean up or demolish and dispose of it. the
So we're
appropriate way.
we're kind of stuck with that without getting any kind of taxes for it or anything at all? I mean, is it owned by anyone?
It is owned by somebody. I'm not sure what the tax,
Okay.
I don't know what the tax situation is on it, but it is owned by,
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Is that an Elm Street address?
it is
Okay.
an Elm Street address.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but
48 Elm
that-
Street. Part of it is coming down, the concrete block part where the roof is kind of caving in. That is coming down probably this fall.
Okay.
There's PCBs in that as well, but it's a bit more manageable.
Okay. Just curious.
And then the last news, I may have told you in August, I had filed an extension for the EPA Brownfields grant because this was originally a 3-year term, and we did have another year that was granted. So,
Great.
so that's
for
hopefully
you.
the petroleum inventory will help spend some of the money.
The extension was for both, right? The
Yes.
brownfields and the petroleum. Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, so, let's begin. I'm happy to welcome the Development Review Board, and the purpose is to have a discussion really of what your issues are. It's not something that the planning board is going to deliberate on now. We want to hear from you, so,
Yeah. So are there issues that you face when you're doing development review with the land use regulations? Things that aren't working, things that aren't clear?
and by that I mean, we'll discuss it at our own meeting time, but we want to hear from you now. so.
I guess it seems to me that one of the, at least from my point of view, that we've had just recently is I'm really getting sick and tired of the sign ordinances. They are a real pain in the butt. You know, I really have
Repeat that
to,
again, I didn't hear the first part.
sign ordinances.
Okay.
Did
Pain
you
in the
hear
butt.
Did you hear the pain in the butt part?
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay, good.
What about it is a pain in the butt?
I'm trying to think when we just did recently, the difference between the types of signs. You have the pictures in here,
The
the
blades, we did the
blade
blade
sign and
The blade sign is often a type of projecting sign.
right, and the thing is that there are a couple of times some people have come before us that already had a sign. So they had to, because it was a new business or a new owner or something, they wanted to replace the sign. My thing is, why can't we just let them replace it? It would be the same sign. But we get stuck on inches and feet and everything, and it's just, it seems like it just holds up new business. I just don't feel that we have to be that stringent about it.
Maya, what do you think?
Well, there are two issues. One is, we couldn't figure out, when the blade sign for Insight Photography came before us, we couldn't figure out where that fell in terms of the square footage. Because there's a picture of it, but there's nothing that talks about that except as a building mounted sign. And so it would be helpful to clarify that. They came up with a really nice solution, took it out of our hands and came within the building mounted sign area?
Projecting sign, right.
Projecting sign ordinance. But they really wanted it to be a little bigger.
Right.
And then the other one was what Catherine was talking about, which is the whole thing where if you start to alter a sign, you have to reduce it by a certain square footage.
Any alteration prompts a reduction?
Yes.
Are you sure that's not a Putney Road thing? Is,
The last time that came up was under the old code.
right,
And the new code is somewhat different.
we did make an exception under, so that was when America's Best was changing to Green Mountain.
Yes.
And we did carve out kind of something, because that was like a change going from a franchise to a single owner, and we didn't, there is some sort of workaround for that
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, I have to say though, the current regulation is deeply perverse, and it's also incredibly hard to actually administer.
Did you say perverse?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's perverse.
Just checking.
Because it allows people to maintain non-conforming and really deeply non-conforming signs almost indefinitely, so long as they don't change ownership. But if you change ownership and have, maybe in the past or maybe in the future, also change the name, then you have to bring it into full conformance. So it's a two-stage: change the actual subject matter of the sign and change the ownership of the property. And it's not clear if it changes and then it changes ownership, if that triggers it, or...
Are you talking about the kind of the non-conforming provision?
Yeah, it's too complex, and the way it actually unfolds is...
The non-conforming sign is too complex.
Yeah.
Ian, do you have? something
Yeah,
on this?
I'm the most recent addition to the Development Review Board, and I think there was a general feeling the Flat Street, I'm sorry, not Flat Street, Insight Photography. And to be clear, they're moving to that location that is, to imagine it, is the back end of the Candle and Night building. I actually worked at a business for many years that has a tremendously long alleyway that is served as, it serves as entrance to a lot of the office workers in what we call the Paramount building. And so they had come up with actually a very it was quite striking in terms of positive graphic design.
Yes.
I mean, they had presented something that I think perhaps the majority of the board, if they had discretion, would have approved it.
Yes.
And I felt that there was sort of a feeling on the board of, it's sad that our hands are tied so strictly to this ordinance, and I think there might have even been a wish that we would have the autonomy to make exceptions or waivers, whatever term is appropriate, because it was such a unique situation that sign wouldn't appear. I mean, I can understand the spirit of these ordinances.
But because it was tucked down.
Because it was so far down the alley, the size of it was almost a necessity, because you would never really be assaulted by it. It would allow you to draw your, and so it's just, I think there was a general feeling from the board of wishing there was a little more flexibility, I think, in terms of, and it may be the case with many boards, where one board feels that their hands are tied by things outside of their control. But it definitely felt that most of us at that time.
Well, there's a lot of head shaking going on, so, you know, and this is why we want to have these meetings, so we can hear that. And James suggested a similar.
What I was hoping is if you could hand me what James had written. Our chair, I guess, couldn't make it here because of a prior commitment. But I mean, since we're being recorded, his letter has said, I'll go to his second part, blade signs. There's a table on page 356 which lists type of signs allowed. It includes wall sign and projecting or hanging sign. This is James Valenti's letter. We were forced to consider whether a proposed blade sign would be a wall sign or a projecting or hanging sign. There is a picture of a blade sign of one of the illustrations identifying types of hanging and projecting signs on page 357, and I think we concluded that it was a projecting or hanging sign based on that. A wall sign can be 1/2 to 2.5 square feet per foot of building frontage, or more if the building was I believe, in back from the street. So building 28 feet long could have a large sign of anywhere from 7 feet by 2 feet to 10 feet by 6 feet. But blade signs are specifically limited as projecting or hanging size to 8 square feet under 319.G2, which is on page 359. I speak more for myself than the DRB as a whole on this, so it sounds like this is his personal hobby horse, but I wish the planning commission would consider loosening this restriction. My rationale is simple. Blade signs are cool. In support thereof, I offer some pictures of cool blade signs that he's got.
I've got a color.
I guess some brewery somewhere.
Yeah.
And, oh, you got the colors.
We did one color.
And then here's a heritage marketplace. And I have no idea what cities these are. This is some grill. Oh, and he says, it is also consistent with the historical character of the town and pedestrian friendly. That's who the signs are designed for, after all, and intrudes no more than do our many awnings. Just look at this picture of Brattleboro filled with sweet blade signs that appear to be about 20 square feet from the 50s. And again, look at Main Street in 1866.
That's not 1866.
No, the next page, here, this one, see?
Oh, because the one that says it
Oh,
underneath those cars,
I
they
don't,
look like they're from the
I don't think I
50s.
can read the rest of James' letter. I didn't realize it went on that long. I just thought maybe the public would be interested to know what was in the content.
Yes.
And then he does, if we're done with signs, he did have a mention about inns and parking, which came up at a recent meeting.
We dealt with inns at our last meeting,
Oh,
because I had his list, yeah. We got rid of that.
Yeah. So again, I guess the question to put forward, the way to the way to put forward the question is, I think it would probably be, I would make the assumption that many of the people who would either currently sit on the planning commission and may sit on it in the future, and the people who currently sit on the development review board, and the people who may sit on the future, probably have a general agreement of not wanting garish signs and wanting some sort of sense of unified design. But I think you're hearing from the development review board that we think if the restrictions are maybe a little too strict, and maybe if there was, I don't know how you build in, I guess the concern is if you build in exemptions and then you have a board that just starts granting exemptions willy-nilly. Again, I don't
I don't think
know.
we would do that.
Well,
I don't understand, there's many different philosophies behind why you create
Excuse me.
ordinances, so.
no, that there's a I think that Ian's trying to say that some boards might be willy-nilly, not that this board is willy-nilly.
Some
Yeah.
future board might.
Some,
be.
yeah.
Before we go off signs, it was mentioned briefly, section 319.L.L on page 364. This whole thing about non-conforming signs. We had this huge discussion both with America's Best and with Panda North about how you figure out the area of the sign. And it has to do with the cost. I mean, it talks about the cost and the percentage of the sign, and you were at that meeting.
The Herrick rule?
What?
Yeah.
The Herrick rule, it was an old
Yeah.
rule based on a former zoning administrator.
Yeah, and it was,
Okay.
it's very difficult, and I think it's very difficult for the public to understand.
It is.
Because we had Panda North first, and part of that was, they had a court ruling that gave them the right to have the sign. And then when America's Best came along, we had a really hard time trying to explain the rule to them and explain that Panda North, actually, there was a court ruling that allowed them to have the sign. And actually, they took some stuff down, and they took down part of their sign, and they're more conforming now. Panda North is.
They
But
get
it's
the-
very difficult for the public, I think, to understand.
They get the court ruling through the environmental court?
Yeah, I think so.
I can't remember if it was the environmental court or.
It's
Was
or
Brian,
whatever
were you
the higher
involved
is.
in that at all?
No, it was
It was
just
before
one
our
time,
time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't remember.
No,
It went
but
to
there was
a court.
But there was a copy of the decision that everybody was waving around.
Okay.
So I'd like you to take a look at that and see if it can be made.
Sure.
If it's not taken away, then made clearer.
And then, and James also goes on about signs generally.
Yeah, I didn't realize his letter went on that long.
That's okay.
I thought I could read it to the record, but.
And again, it's, the signs are difficult because legislating aesthetics is difficult.
Am I then pretty clear that the zoning ordinance in terms of signs is really limited to the size of the signs, and that there is actually very little control that somebody could make within the conforming square footage they're allowed, the most garish sign you can imagine?
We do have some restrictions on materials and
Okay.
whatnot,
Okay.
but
If the square footage conformed and the materials conformed, then you
And
could
the
say
lighting.
there's no accounting for taste.
yes.
Okay.
That's right.
James's further point here has to do with signs, and he's not really a fan of size-based restrictions because they don't accomplish improving the look of the town. And he points to a couple of big signs on Putney Road that he thinks are better than newer ones. So he recognizes the tension between, you can have a big sign, but it has to look nice, and, so he talks a little bit about that. But he wants to see some route that allows people to seek a permit for a larger sign if it is designed to be visually appealing, unique, and consistent with the historical characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood. He said this is a James issue rather than a DRB issue.
But I think I'm hearing all
We
you
don't
guys
disagree.
concur.
We
Right.
No, I don't disagree with them at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel the
And-
same
and
about
Jane-
large sizes, large signs then?
I think the key thing with where there was a general frustration, because what Insight showed us was something that seemed to fit in with the character of the town and served what we thought was a good purpose for their organization without affecting downtown in a negative way, but we were constricted by
Yeah,
It
it
didn't
sounds
conform
also
to this.
like it was particular to the intricacies of their property
Location.
and the street location.
Yes, and I think that when we say that this was a special case, is oftentimes because things are so unique and locations are very different, special cases often happen more often than you think. You know, where it may be 2 years from now, or it may be 2 months from now, where we get another case where we're like, oh, isn't that a bummer that we can't have a little flexibility? I don't know. I don't have the institutional memory.
Well, I think with that, I mean, there is not really, I think, only allowing 8 square feet on a blade type sign is not very big. Especially, you know, depending on, you know, insight is kind of a long, big word. If it's insight photography, it's even longer. It's not gonna fit and be legible. So there's a couple ways the planning commission can, I'm confident that we can find some sort of solution if that's what the planning commission wants.
There was another case that we had, I think it was last year, year before that. We had somebody who already had an established business on Elliott Street. And what we ended up doing is, and it went through, but they ended up putting their blade sign in Harmony Lot.
The outrageous building.
Yes.
So they have kind of the unique art
Yes,
piece.
because, see, and then something like that comes up. It's kind of like saying, we're glad your business is here, but we don't care if anybody sees you. So that's why they wanted it in Harmony Lot, because it's made them stand out a little bit more. And we went through quite a bit as far as the size of that. And that's another thing, you know, if we could have just said, it's a beautiful sign, you have a great business, it's not going to harm the beauty of Harmony Lot. You know, so, I mean, something like that, we should be able to have the flexibility to be able to say, yes, go ahead and do it. And I guess that was the same thing, you know, give us a little more flexibility.
Or I think I'm asking again, as being a novice member of the board, is just simply, how could you build in a certain amount of flexibility? Like, how would you set up the oversight? Would people have to jump through a couple more hoops, but could receive exemptions or waivers, or whatever term you would want to use for that sort of thing?
So one of the things that we'll look at later tonight is, we've been talking about some sort of creative or distinctive sign option where maybe there is not a, you know, basically if you don't fit into one of these categories, but you have something unique. I mean, we still have to have standards that are, you know, measurable, because the last version we looked at was a little bit like, well, what is, I don't remember what some of the words that it used. You know, we still kind of need to define what you're looking at, but there is a proposal in here that would allow something different, something easier for outrageous to go through. But we try to make it so that signs can be approved by Broughton.
Yes, that's what I'm, yeah.
But, you know, something different like that is going to have to come before the DRB, which is an extra cost, but, you know, there's that. We could have a provision for blade signs. I was looking around at a couple of different standards. It seems like they allow up to 24 square feet. We need to figure out if that's too big.
In other
but
municipalities
in
in
other-
Vermont.
Not in Vermont.
Okay.
Or across the country.
And to be very
So we
clear, when
could-
you say that, that is 3 times larger than the current allowed.
Right, so that might not be right for Brattleboro, but maybe there's something in between, so we can,
Are there different standards for different zoning districts?
yes.
Yeah. And then the other recent sign that came before the DRB, it was similar to insight in the eyes of the applicant, and that was for McDonald's. And they felt it was critical that they have a very visible road sign, freestanding sign, because that's how their business is brought in. And they felt the standards as written didn't allow it to be large enough, because there were specific site situations, including nearby signage and, I believe, a fence. So in that case,
trees, unless trees.
they felt they needed relief, and that the sign ordinance didn't allow enough flexibility. But the board turned them down, and
The
they
board
have a-
turned the McDonald's down?
Yeah, so they have a conforming sign, and it's an example of a sign that the applicant was quite sure would be insufficient. So,
I don't think they're having any trouble.
I don't think their
having
business hurt.
yeah. So-
But that's good to know.
In the past,
Yeah.
that type of situation where businesses came and claimed that standard sign regulations wouldn't be good enough for them, it was common. Almost every large commercial enterprise came before the DRB and asked for a variance.
Yeah, Putney Road's hard.
Are variances
Yeah.
for signs any different from variances? I don't know, you just
No,
can't
we
get
can't
one.
get a
We really
variance.
can't
What about
do
like
variances.
a conditional use?
We can do conditional.
That
Well, that's-
seems like that would allow more flexibility to the DRB.
Do waivers.
Yeah.
And- Yeah, there could be waivers, it could be a conditional use.
I can understand the philosophy behind zoning, that allowing for waivers can undermine what the mission of the zoning can be. I'm aware of that danger. So that's why I'm just curious of what, if you did build in a way for people to have exemptions to your rules, you know, how you balance out.
But I also think that we have to be careful about just throwing a waiver in and creating a new process. I mean, at that point, it's like, well,
Okay.
is the standard too small? Is, you know,
Yeah, like if there's too many waivers, that means there's a problem
there's a
with the
problem.
standards.
Yeah, so it
Yes,
should be,
yes, I see.
we should be looking at it.
But all
It
you
should be an
guys are telling us
exception,
that
not
there's
a
a problem
norm.
with the standard.
I have one other thing I wanted to bring up on a different subject. The snow building, the new one that's gonna be built on Flat Street, next to the Boys and Girls Club. When they first came to the DRB, we heard from people on Elliott Street in the back that they didn't like the building height, and they didn't like the fact that it was gonna block light and certain kinds of views that they had. And I asked the question whether they could like lop off the 5th floor of the building, and they said economically they couldn't do that. They needed to have the apartments up. So I kind of dropped it. And later they came back to us and they had actually lowered the height of the building. And I don't know where this fits in. I'm looking at the design guidelines for new construction in the historic district, but I wouldn't like us to get into having the kind of fights they're having in Boston right now, which is building height being so tall that people have no sunshine anymore, no sunlight at all in some of their buildings and in their existing buildings. And I don't know, I have no suggestion about how to deal with it. I'm just saying I think it's something that maybe the planning commission should think about.
Well, there must have been a building there in the past that was, I mean, the problem is the topography, because the one building's, you know, Elliott Street's so much higher than
A practical
Flat.
restriction too on the height based on, I think, fire regulations on how far you can get a fire truck ladder up, right?
There are, we do allow for, in the downtown, in the urban center, we do allow for 6 stories maximum height. You know, I think it's a change for Elliott Street. I mean, we can definitely.
I'd like to know
should
what
take
their
a look at
scenery was being blocked.
Oh, I looked at a few apartments in that area, and it's really nice.
They can see the Connecticut from some of the apartments
Yeah.
up there, and they can see the wet
But
stuff.
not from
Wet
where
stone
that
and the
building is.
co-op.
Where that building's going up next to the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh,
What-
okay.
What can't you
No, the
see?
building's on Elliott Street.
I
They
know
was-
it's on Elliott
He
Street.
was gonna, the new building was gonna block their view of the Connecticut.
yeah, that kind of comes with the territory,
Yeah,
I think.
kind of
Yeah.
need places for people.
I think
to
that
live.
was some of the thinking in
Lowering the height.
no, if the way I remember it was, we had given them height restrictions on the machinery on the top of the building as their conditional use. Brian, tell me if I'm wrong. We'd
Yeah,
given them
we did.
conditional use, and then apparently when they went back to their engineering, you know, let's calculate, and they said, well, we need X number of feet of machinery on the top of the building, so they rejiggered the interior floors so that they could still come in under the maximum amount, and it just worked out that it,
The total height, even with the machinery, is now lower.
yeah, but we
Than the
did give them
original.
approval so that the machinery on top is now taller than what we had originally approved. They came back for the approval of that change. And I think, my understanding was, you know,
That sounds like a good solution. to me.
So it's not blocked by a solid building, but it's blocked by,
well, there'll be solar
Machinery
panels
and-
and there'll be air handlers on the roof. And, you know, the question is that if those people in those apartments previously had an empty lot, they will soon have a building that
Yeah.
looks a lot like other downtown buildings. So it's possible some views will be impeded, but I think the general feeling was that that wasn't a reason to disapprove the applicant.
The site can be redeveloped, and that shouldn't prohibit them from redeveloping your site.
Well, exactly, it just didn't seem
No,
to
but
be.
the second design was much preferable.
Sometimes it takes two times.
And I don't, there wasn't any way we could tell them, you know, to do that from the beginning, I guess is my point, and I don't know.
Right.
oh, that
But
it was just the public
they
comment
had-
that inspired that change.
Sought your guidance prior to development, Brian?
No, in this
It's a
case,
combination of things.
I think the shorter height was in some ways product of more engineering of the design,
Yeah.
because they were trying out different design strategies, in case
Yeah.
the floor height was reduced.
I was going to touch on the second thing, you have the special flood hazard amendment, is that something you're working on, or
Yeah, little tweaks to it.
which we do, in what respect?
We'll get there.
All right.
Jim, do you have something you want to talk about?
No, I'm
Do it, and
just
you-
curious to know what the difference is going to be. I mean, is it, obviously it's not going to get less.
No.
Okay.
So one change, I mean, we'll get to it. I don't know how much you want me to jump ahead.
Yeah, let's just wait. Is there something as it relates to the work of the DRB?
Well, if they can't build there, then we say you can't build there. I mean, we base it on, you know, whether it's 100-year or 50-year or 5 million year. The point is that you can't build there. And, you know, if that's going to change, or is that going to be more complex, then, you know,
I wouldn't say it's going to be more complex. You know, yeah.
Anyway, we're
okay.
We'll
I
go
mean,
into it.
we're gonna go into our the rest of the agenda.
Oh, all right.
When,
I'm sure we'll find out about it.
yeah. Anything else?
But you're welcome to stay.
Yeah.
No,
welcome to
wait a
stay.
minute, no, I gotta eat dinner.
Really appreciate you.
We could talk
Each of you
tomorrow.
coming,
Okay.
that's really
Yeah,
important.
and
and
Not trying to be evasive.
Good for both
No,
of
no,
us.
I mean, I'm just curious, because a lot of stuff that we are doing is based on whether or not they can actually build there, and especially with some of the older stuff.
So we're going to talk about you can take that packet if you want. You'll see the strikeout version.
Oh, okay.
We're going to talk about a possible change in the urban center.
Okay.
Maybe allowing some development in the floodway. But then we'll also talk about increasing the base flood elevation.
Right.
But there's caveats with it, so I know
Good,
it sounds.
okay, great. I mean, I'm more concerned about that than I am about you.
Well, thanks,
Take care.
everybody.
Worry about
Thank you,
people's
Catherine.
sunlight.
Yes.
I mean,
Basic
that's-
tenet of planning is light and air.
Yes, yeah. 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 So I just wanted you to think about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Catherine.
I'm gonna stick around a little bit more, just because I don't watch you guys on TV, so I'll just
Yeah.
see what
You're
you're like
missing
live.
a lot.
I know. I don't watch our meetings on TV, because I've been there.
Does anyone watch this stuff?
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, yeah. people
Generally,
do.
the
I
people
watch
approach the
planning
chair of the
commissions
board to
once
tell
in a
them
while.
things. Apparently, the chair is the
The
person who gets
bombarded
the comments on the street. I saw your board.
Oh, Eric also gets.
Does Eric get a lot of comments from,
Yeah.
okay.
I have someone who says, "Oh, I see you on TV all the time," and I'm shocked.
I hate that.
Isn't that awful?
So see you
Yeah.
Monday. I'm gonna get my husband to drop me off here for the 5 o'clock, and then I don't know how people are getting up at 10 o'clock.
I can always drive a bunch of people.
Because he's probably gonna meet us at Clark.
Yeah, I'll have a car too. Alrighty, approve the minutes of August 6th.
You looking for a second?
First.
First, I mean, yeah.
We can count.
Was that considered Josh?
Yeah,
making
well,
a
I
motion?
was waiting for Jess or someone else to say.
Oh, because you want to do the seconding?
Yeah, no, I'd like this. I was ready for it. Because I'm also not ready to read out what you guys are looking at.
Oops. Right to next page.
So,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What's next? Public comment. Well, Ian, you're the public.
I have no comment.
Okay, very good.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right.
Okay, the special, the potential land use regulation amendments. Sue?
Okay.
okay, so with these, setting aside what we discussed tonight with the DRB, this first cut at the sign regulations was really to accomplish two things. The first was there was that Gilbert versus Reed Supreme Court decision, which basically clarifies when towns can impose content-based regulations. So essentially, if you are a non-commercial sign, we can't deal with content. So we can't say, you are a political sign, so we treat you this way, and you are a temporary event sign, so we treat you another way. So the first cut with kind of the exempt signs in 319D, sorry, I don't have page numbers on it, those are intended to deal with Gilbert. I had discussion with a fellow planner who, she seemed to indicate that real estate and construction signs to her were commercial speech, advertising the real estate agent or the particular company. I'm a little unsure of that, and I want to check into that a little bit more, but I did leave that you can have a real estate or construction sign of not more than 6 square feet. Number 5, which has the strikeout, so that's garage and yard sale signs, that would fall under temporary signs.
They're not exempt.
What's that?
Sorry. They're not
Um,
exempt?
They are still exempt, but we cannot,
Content, sure.
yeah, we can't treat them differently. On
So it's that
premises,
all temporary signs are
Yeah.
exempt,
Mhm.
no matter what they're about.
as long as they're not related to commercial.
Yep, okay.
Number 3, so we get rid of political campaign signs, because as you'll see, we treated political campaign signs different than, certain types of temporary signs, special event signs. You can't. It doesn't matter what the sign says, we can really only regulate on type of sign and size of sign. So, we can do duration and that kind of thing. So number 3 is kind of your typical political campaign signs. This town, we've never really regulated, there's often different signs.
There's
up.
timing restrictions on political signs, but I don't think they're municipally based, they're state-based.
Yeah.
And that applies to signs at the right of way.
Yeah. So that's what 319D is about trying to fix. Then there's temporary signs, which if you go, they're alluded to under exempt signs. So we have a couple of different temporary signs So it's subsection 12. Really should have- Next time I will, it starts, you'll see some of the kind of track changes in the left margin.
Temporary
Yeah.
signs, yeah.
So we used to require permits for specialist vent signs. And sometimes people got the permits, sometimes they didn't. But since we can't call them special event signs anymore, we're just gonna put them under temporary signs and say that they're exempt as long as they meet these certain requirements. So we're allowing basically temporary signs. You can have, it can be displayed for no more than 21 days within a 6-month period. So basically 2 times a year you could have one out for 21 days, or you can have a couple of different ones.
Well, what about this, at the date of erection of a temporary sign must be written in indelible ink on the lower right-hand corner of the sign.
The idea
Political
is,
signs don't have that.
right, but this has a bigger square footage that they're allowed to have
Oh, I
in
see.
place, so.
So
Um,
political signs are not temporary signs?
No, because they're not political signs anymore, they're signs that express an opinion. So therefore, you could have a political type sign up at any time of year. So if you drive around town, you might see, when VY was closing, you saw closed VY type signs.
Right.
We
I'm
didn't
just
require
saying,
permits, they could be up.
you don't require permits, but did they have the date on them?
No,
But
because
now
they're
you
different,
do
they're
want them
expressing
to
an
have-
opinion.
I'm-
I see what you mean.
I'm just confused as to, I thought we were taking political signs and making them temporary signs.
No. We're putting political signs under on-premise signs that express an opinion, interest, position, or other commercial message of any sign type, so, yeah, that would be, I would clean that up.
What number is
Yeah,
that one?
where are you at now?
I went back to the exempt signs, 319D, which is that second page.
I think that's why I started getting really confused.
So temporary signs are signs that are bigger than 4 square feet in area per side and not
Yeah,
illuminated.
they're meant to deal with like the special events.
Okay.
And so that probably has to be cleaned up for sure.
But they'll be required now to have the date so that you'll know when they were erected.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
that
mean,
makes
whether
sense.
that happens, I mean, ideally then, because then we can say, well, you either need a permit for your sign because it's been up too long,
Mhm.
or we could take that part out and just.
But
Now,
the same sign can hop locations. Like if it's here for 3 weeks, then there for 3 weeks, and
Yeah,
that's acceptable.
as long as it's on somebody's property, yeah. Yeah.
let me ask a question about portable signs. Item D.
Mhm.
If you have one on the sidewalk, it can't be more than 12 feet from the associated blah, blah, blah. Let's say Inside Photography had an event and they had a sandwich board sign on the sidewalk. That's greater than 12 feet from their entrance to the sidewalk, and therefore they couldn't have a sign like that.
Can't be more than 12? Were you saying can't be more than 12 feet?
This reminds me of a
Yeah,
conversation.
it's right after where we were talking about, it's item number 13D. Which is, and then I just remember like Alici's couldn't have their sign and it was that whole big hullabaloo.
It's in G.
In Closing Theater Restaurant. Because.
Because it is not.
It was not on the sidewalk.
Well, it also wasn't on their premise. That's
Right.
kind of the problem. Like, signs are supposed to be on your premises. So that one goes way off.
But if you had an
That was-
agreement from the owner of the other premises?
Well, for example, if we stuck with the Inside Photography example, is that their sidewalk in front of that alley where their entrance is located? And would that
I don't.
come?
The sidewalks downtown are all owned by the town.
Okay, so then, if that were the case, if they had to own the sidewalk, then no sandwich signs could be placed on the downtown.
The town attorney has felt that, having a sign on the adjacent sidewalk is on premise, even though the town did take ownership of those sidewalks.
Okay, so on premises for, again, inside photography, it's greater than 12 feet away.
Yeah.
So if they wanted to have a sign, there would be no way for them to get a waiver or an exception to this. And I'm only
Seems
bringing this
not.
up because.
Unless it were a temporary sign that a adjacent business agreed to put up for them, right?
What says I think it says the associated customer entrance though, so if your definition of associated customer entrance is Insight Photography's entrance.
I guess it would depend if you would consider it a temporary sign or a portable sign. True.
If it's a sandwich board sign, it's usually a portable.
Do you mind a question?
Go ahead.
Not to add more complexity, but you have this section 12 temporary signs, and you have this section 13 portable signs. Does it make sense to have a category called portable temporary signs?
No.
No.
I mean, in a certain sense,
There's an issue
isn't a
here.
portable sign by its definition a temporary sign?
Yes.
Because you port it in place and then you port it presumably. You can't leave it out overnight. I don't know.
I think
I guess
that-
there's no restriction on it.
I
I'm
think-
just wondering, like, an interesting example, and I don't know that, the Brattleboro Music Center is located directly across from the park,
Mhm.
Living Memorial Park. And I believe that there are often signs that are sandwich boards, and I believe they're probably put with the permission of the Parks and Recs Department, that say no BMC event parking here.
Well,
To keep-
those are park and rec signs, because the park and rec don't want parking on their
Oh,
property.
okay. And I'm just wondering, as Jess said, could one property owner give permission to another property owner to put a portable sign?
No, apparently not. Looking at
But
Brian's
it's a
face.
temporary
No, they're
sign.
off premises.
Yeah, they're off premise. You can't have an off premise sign.
So by definition of being on premises or off premises, not,
So let's say Frank is down the road a little, off the main thoroughfare. Joe owns the property right on the thoroughfare. And Frank says to Joe, hey, do you mind if I put up a sandwich board? That would be a non-conforming sign.
Yes.
yeah, because
That's exactly what
he
the
doesn't
Luigi's
have, yeah,
situation was.
it's not up to those two property owners, it's up to, or store owners, it's up to the town.
But
If the property owner, let's say Joe, who's put up Frank's sign, decided to take the town to court and say, I believe it's my free speech right to put any sign, you would have to point to something and say you're incorrect.
Existing Supreme Court precedent
Okay.
and state law.
Okay. All right, I just asked. Thank you.
that's interesting because I feel like then how does that work with political signs? Because they are the candidate signs, right?
Because
Yeah,
they're not
but-
commercial.
They're
So
not
they're
commercial.
And so they're protected by the Supreme Court.
Uh-huh.
I think what needs, so I'm happy to look at the portable signs and look at the distance and that kind of thing. Maybe, I think I need to look back at the temporary signs and make sure that something's not fitting right, maybe the definition of a temporary sign. But I think I need to look at that one again.
I just think that there might be more instances of these hidden businesses that, more than anyone else, need a sign on the frontage.
And I think as they're being used on some places like Putney Road, they're not really in conformance with the current regulations.
And signs, especially portable signs, can be difficult to enforce because they're portable. They're in and out and they're, yeah.
So like portable signs used for food trucks,
That's different. They're
That's
allowed
different.
portable signs.
they're allowed portable signs
because-
off premises.
Food trucks have special
Okay.
zoning.
There is, yeah, they
Okay.
do they do get a permit and we kind of look at where their sign's gonna be placed, where's the seating, where's the parking, you know, that kind of stuff. It's part of their,
Mostly to make sure that it's safe for people where the cars are, you know, separating the people from their cars.
Do you, and then I guess this would be my question to you is, would you feel as, I guess Brian, maybe it's a question direct, do you feel like you actually have more leeway in terms of placement of portable signs in relation to a food truck than leeway in terms of placement of a portable sign in relation to a fixed address business?
I haven't read that recently. They have their own specific standards for food trucks, and I think it includes the placement of signs.
I mean, I think mostly it's dealing with signs that are like in their area, like so where their food truck is set up. It's not really dealing with signs, you know. Again, it's an on-premise, off-premise. They can't have a sign that, you know.
When the Dosa cart was down the Hooker Dunham Alley, they had a sign that's occasionally came out to Main Street,
Okay.
sort of like the same distance as the Insight and a potential Main Street sandwich board sign.
I mean, it's just kind of a logical thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that was 12 feet. That patio where they were set up is part of the Hooker Dunham building, so it was the same property at least, but I would imagine it's more than 12 feet.
Well, it seems to me, was there something specific about signs that you wanted to do
Oh.
this evening?
Yeah, so then.
Because otherwise,
yeah,
I
right.
think everybody needs to absorb what Brian
Yeah.
and the DRB said and look at the sign ordinance, for next time. But if you want to do
Yeah.
something specific, let's do
So
that.
319M is another attempt at the creative signs that you saw this time they were distinctive signs.
Signs are hard.
And actually, James had seen this language, and he had one comment about it, which was, do you want to limit the number of distinctive signs on a property? Because, we might want to limit it like we limit the other signs.
Just
to
one
number.
distinctive sign per property.
Or,
It can
Yeah,
get
that
busy.
kind of thing.
It could look
Las
messy.
Vegas.
because we don't want it to be such an open valve that all of a sudden, one building frontage has the ability to have like 5 distinctive signs on it. I mean, that's the kind of, we're trying
That'd be
to
the most
prevent that
distinctive
disorder.
building.
Would be fun.
Could be.
Could be fun. It could be fun for you guys to look at it, but not for us to hear about it.
I'm sorry, I was stuck on just reading L, which was non-conforming signs, but you've been discussing M.
319M, it's
Which
all
is a new
underlined
proposal.
section.
Yes,
what you're
this is
existing.
kind of part of the flexibility, giving you flexibility.
It's just getting to what James was
Right.
asking for.
I mean, I think under this, you could have approved the Insight sign. Obviously, there's a visual emphasis on the street.
Okay, let me just get the clear thing for the understanding of the DRB board is to me is the applicability. Applicants may seek conditional use approval for distinctive signs that do not conform to the standards of this section. But then there's an A, B,
Yeah, there's some
C, D,
additional.
E. This is the
This is the
criteria you
criteria.
must use to make that determination.
Mhm.
Is that how to read that?
Yeah. Which might need to be cleaned up a little bit, but yes.
Do you want me to read it out loud? I just always am thinking that person at home was sometimes just listening. Or you don't have time, okay. Now, were you sort of motivated by creating or drafting M from sort of the scuttlebutt or the,
We've heard it for a while from
Okay.
James.
okay. So he's
Yeah,
been sort
I
of
mean, it's just kind of
communicating
the way.
this feeling.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And Brian, do you think this is workable?
Have you seen it?
Not the final version, but.
Would,
yeah, I think so.
Is this is something that would have to go to the DRB if you couldn't make this determination in
Right.
your office?
It involves discretion, so yes, it's a DRB matter.
Well, looks good to me.
I have a question about E.
Mhm.
Does that mean a business that is a franchise may not apply for a distinctive sign because the content will be the franchise name in some distinctive design?
No,
or is
it's
that-
kind of meant to get at that McDonald's. McDonald's wants a bigger sign,
Right.
but really there's nothing, it is a franchise.
Nothing
They're not
unique
doing
about it.
anything unique with that sign. It's not like a throwback to a sign from the 1950s.
Right.
It's their standard corporate sign package. They just want it larger than that's what it's intended
Yeah.
to.
But let's be
I,
clear.
So it
I
says-
think that that's not really clear, that the content, I mean, it seems like you're mandating that it can't be a business that is a franchise.
Okay.
I would
Applies
read
to
it,
Because I've seen a cool McDonald's sign that definitely was distinctive and added to the character of the neighborhood by being what it was. So I wouldn't cut them out of
Oh,
it.
the other thing about the last phrase, and not as an afterthought, if someone designs a building and then they come in a year later and have a cool sign that matches the building, it's not necessarily an integral part of the building design, but it does complement the building design.
Okay. Yep. So
Are you
should-
saying that the implication of time in that statement?
Yeah.
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 I wonder if it would be clarified, if you wanted to, I think I understand the intent, but if you wanted to do the clarity, would be almost a reiteration of that term distinctive. Because if I read this as a DRB member, will not be a standard corporate or franchise sign, but rather will be a unique visual element. The way I could interpret it would be that it's not precluding any corporation or franchise to request conditional use to create a distinctive sign. But if they say, in the case of McDonald's, it's like every other McDonald's, it's just bigger than you're conforming, saying, well, it doesn't fit the criteria of being distinctive. But if they did say, we've proposed this sign, which is a throwback to a 50s McDonald's, then we would say, well, we would have to at least consider it
Because of the story.
because it does fit that
Mhm.
criteria of distinctive. I'm just curious if E may be used as a way to reiterate that term distinctive.
Yeah, something about original design or original concept in there, I think.
With the term, yeah, because you've used it, unique visual element, I think that's a key phrase that you wouldn't want to lose in your criteria.
Yeah.
I would maybe even move, not to get wordsmithy, but something like move unique visual element to the beginning of the bullet E.
Yeah. What
Well,
do you
going in E.
think? Do you think that even if it's a unique design, it doesn't necessarily have to be original to this particular business in Brattleboro? Can it be a sign that appears in another town for this same business or another business that they emulate and is just copied? And is that
You mean like,
acceptable? Or
like
do you want
if
it to
Keene
be-
has the same store, we could have the same sign, Keene and Brattleboro, and that wouldn't necessarily be a corporate franchise. It would just be what?
Right, or the Works, or Ruggles and Hunt,
Sam's, yeah.
if they wanted to have distinctive signs in both or all of their locations. Does that count as unique?
I don't know if we can split those hairs.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure that I'm, yeah. I guess I'm feeling like whatever they propose has to be unique. It can be somewhere else, like if Ruggles and
Right,
Hunt,
so it's
you know,
not
Walpole, it
unique
could be the same one, it just
to
has to be.
Brattleboro.
It doesn't have to be unique to Brattleboro to me. I mean, I guess when I think of unique signs, I'm thinking of that outrageous one, like that, here's this, kind of art gallery, they did this sign that took like the
reflects their own art.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. There's no way that, you know, I mean, they did find a way to make it work because they considered like the bumper as part of the structure. Or I'm thinking of the Insight, although I think we can also deal with vertical blade signs, and we probably should. But, you know, this could have been a relief for them. You know, if Ruggles and Hunt has some really cool sign design that they want to use somewhere else and use it here, I'm cool with that.
So I think,
It
I
doesn't
mean,
have
do
to be
we,
unique for the Brattleboro
do we
location.
agree on what the intent of what we'd like to see for that? And then maybe we ask Sue to come up with a suggestion.
Yeah, I think we gave her a lot of suggestions for
Yeah.
number E and move to C. But I think in the meantime, we should all look at the sign ordinance that we have here and listen to what the DRB had to say to see at the next meeting if we
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. And I can look
Just-
at it
yeah.
more as, I was just looking at certain parts of it, so
Yeah.
I can take another look at the whole.
Shall we move to special flood hazard? Or does anyone have any more to say on signs?
I have a lot to say about signs,
I
but
know.
we'll save it for another time.
I think
Okay.
the blade signs are sweet too. It's-
Yeah,
Should I give a shot at blade signs?
I
I
definitely.
think
I
we
think
should.
it-
It almost feels like it
Some
was
direction.
a
I think
mistake
it'd be
because we
good
have,
to see a-
because we have a
attempt at that.
visual and we actually call them blade signs in there, but they're, I do think 8 square feet is
Yeah,
small.
I
Maybe, do you want to wait to do that until after we've had our discussion about what the DRB was saying about signs? Because we may,
Is this not that discussion? Or is this not
Well,
this
at the
discussion?
next meeting, when we've all read the signs,
Mhm.
and then Sue has a draft of a blade.
I was
then
saying
we-
maybe save creating
Save
a
the
draft
draft.
until
Mm,
we
I'd
can
rather have
a
the
full
draft,
discussion.
because because that'll prompt
It-
more discussion,
Yeah.
and then we can finalize it.
I agree. I'd like to see the draft. Yes, it'll give us like a thing to discuss and hang, you know, things off of.
Like a sign.
Yeah.
I think one thing we should consider too in the draft is considering who the judge of these distinctive signs is.
It's the
Who's
DRB.
determining that?
It's the
Yeah.
DRB.
It's
How-
the
And it's
DRB.
only gonna be the DRB.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's based
absolutely.
on
No,
the
yeah.
criteria
Yeah.
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 here about
But
it.
it seems like it's super open to interpretation. Yeah. There's the gray area.
But I
Yeah,
think
it's-
that they
that's-
were, it is a gray area, and it's always subjective, but I think we heard from the DRB
Yeah.
today that they really wanted
Absolutely,
that
I
flexibility.
agree
Yeah.
with them
Yeah.
royally, absolutely.
It's hard to be specific
Yeah,
and cover all this.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
give
yeah,
that
yeah.
flexibility, it really is.
yeah,
So
but I
it's
would
like-
be concerned about one person in business and being approved to sign, and then another person in business being, trying to do the exact same thing, but not being approved.
Yeah,
But I think Sue can probably appreciate and take into account. I think what you're trying to say is like the longevity of something, you know, if we put something in here that allows for some discretion, you know, we've got a smart DRB but
Yeah.
not that Brattleboro would ever have a not smart DRB, but you know, things change over
Yeah.
time. So I think what you're trying to say is thinking about the longevity of what we put in there. And that the intent is clear and workable over the intended longevity of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, flood hazard?
Would you allow one more comment from the DRB? Which
I'm
is-
gonna have to step out in like 5 minutes, so
I
just so,
apologize.
but I'll come back.
I simply think that the review criteria, whatever it is, it makes sense to have it enumerated, and I almost wonder, Brian, if it's almost like if somebody did request the conditional use, they would need to almost have a form where they would make an
Yeah.
explanation how they meet A,
Yeah,
B, C.
that's how,
Definitely,
yeah, we can.
That's how all conditional uses are.
Yeah, I think that's the key, to me, to understand it, the right review criteria seems so important.
Mm-hmm, agreed. Okay, special flood hazard. Is this long? Is this more than 5 minutes?
Okay, there's 3 things in here. The first one, you don't have to look at the language right now. The first one has to do with, right now, if you're building a new structure, a residential structure, it needs to be 1 foot above the base flood elevation, if you're residential. If you're a commercial structure, it needs to be flood-proofed to 1 foot above base flood elevation. we're recommending that change to 2 feet above base flood elevation, either for floodproofing or for building. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The standards have never really taken into account cumulative development in the floodplains. And so we know that the flood levels are higher, so 2 feet gives a greater protection because based on all the cumulative development in the floodplains. The other reason is the insurance premiums drop the higher above base flood elevation you are. So the state's new model is recommending 2 foot above base flood elevation. I think it's kind of best practice. The trade-off to it is there is a provision in the regulations, and we can't change this, but if you're substantially damaged, more than 50% of the assessed value of your home, you need to come in compliance with the regulations. So you have a house, it's below base flood elevation, it's worth $100,000. You get flooded, you have $52,000 worth of damage. In order to rebuild in that area, you're going to need to then make it 2 feet above base flood elevation. Elevating
just
it
an
even at 1
expense.
foot above is an expense. I mean,
There's an
it's-
expense.
There's an expense, maybe it makes it a little bit tougher. I would argue that building at 1 foot above base flood elevation, if you have to lift it, that's tough too. But it can be more of an expense
But they
if you're
might
filling.
save in insurance if it's 2 feet above than 1 foot
Yeah.
above.
So the state is recommending that towns go to 2 feet above. It can be viewed as more restrictive, but it can also be viewed as safer. Should be viewed as being safer and also saving people who have flood insurance more money, which with a change in the way that they're calculating the insurance premiums, that's actually a big deal.
You know,
Brian
I
printed
met
off this
someone the
graphic.
other day whose house is in the flood zone, and they said that their insurance was going up 18% each year,
It's significant.
and that's significant.
And
So
that's
if
for a
this
homeowner.
were-
If you're a commercial business, it's going up even
Yeah.
higher because they've gone to the actualized rates already.
So that seems like.
This is where most of our buildings are, as Brian said, below.
What is it? Most buildings are below.
Are below base flood elevation and,
Most of them have basements, so they're as bad as it gets. Their first floor elevation is 3 or more feet below base flood elevation.
And to comply, they would build up that foundation or bring fill in?
they can
to
bring
fill that
fill in
property?
and put it on the foundation. They can do it on piers.
Jack
some-
up the
some-
building.
Yeah.
So generally what they would have to do is fill their basement so the inside was flush with the ground level. There could still be a crawl space. For some houses, that would make them into conformance and they'd have to put in flood vents. Some they'd have to jack up the house further and put a small extension into their foundation or piers.
So
And were there
regardless
many
if you're doing
residential
it.
properties that, there must have been very many residential properties that were impacted by Irene in Brattleboro. Had
Yes.
they done this or something like this?
There have been a couple, 39 Flat Street has been retrofitted, or maybe, no, 39 Frost Street has been
Mhm.
retrofitted. A couple other buildings in town have been retrofitted, in part because the flood insurance costs were so
Didn't-
high that,
They had to.
Didn't the Whetstone Arts fill their basement?
yeah, they did. Yeah. Some on Meadowbrook had retrofit because it had such a severe impact on the resale price of the houses.
Mhm.
Frost Street and Frost
Place.
Place near me are both in the flood zone.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I'm like just a couple feet up the hill from that. It's like,
Is this all of Flat Street, the flood zone, or does that end?
most of it,
It's
yeah. I'm trying
Pretty much to
picture
the
that.
east of the edge of the road. It goes across the street, a lot of it kind of.
On the north side, it
It's-
kind of like cuts through the property lines because it doesn't, floods don't respect property lines.
Where's that? Am I allowed to ask about specific properties?
I don't
And
think
how
that's
this
a
might
good
apply?
idea.
Okay.
You could ask me tomorrow. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, and the
do have this
The
map.
town website, I think, has flood zone maps available, and you can overlay that with the property
Yeah, you can
line
go on
maps.
Maps
So
Online, this is
If
what
you,
you'd be
if you
looking at.
like maps,
Yeah, I
or
got
like
it. I
to
have it
nerd
in
out
here.
over maps, which I do, you can play with it a lot.
I do, that's great.
I may have spent some time
I think
looking
that's
at
the main criteria, members of the planning commission.
nerding out over maps,
maps.
yeah.
I've got to go. Thank you
Bye,
for
Ian,
inviting
thank
us.
Thank you.
Thank you for
And it's
coming.
very interesting to see
anytime.
all the concerns that you have to think about.
Across the
So,
street
do
and
you
bring
want
back.
to adjourn? Do you want to take a break? What do you want to do?
I hate to hold you guys up, I have to go pick up some kids across the street and bring them back here so we can finish our meeting. So they get out of gymnastics at 7:30.
I mean, if we've gotten through the things we need to think about, and it's not,
So there's one big one to think about, and I don't think we can solve it tonight.
because I don't think we'll solve signs tonight.
And then we can go back over these. So there's two things I need done.
Mhm.
The first thing is the municipal planning grant. I'm gonna apply. I do need kind of a resolution to approve that. The draft is not done yet, but it is like a downtown design plan that would be guiding public and private investments, kind of in the public realm. You know, we're not going to get into economic development and that kind of thing. We're going to be looking more at like the roads, the public spaces,
The goal
kind
was
of the
to
public-private spaces.
A design plan that was not duplicative of all the other agencies that do economic development and things like that.
So that
I don't
is
mind waiting for you to go grab your kids.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll take a
I will
little
be
break.
like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's
Because they're
fine.
getting out at 7:30.
We'll talk among ourselves.
So there's that.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Oh, we had a very interesting discussion.
Okay, so before we deal with the municipal planning grant, the other thing I want to talk about is, so we currently don't allow residential units in the floodway. We don't allow a mobile home, any sort of residence to be in the floodway. We do have some
But
buildings.
I just want to
in-
make sure that everybody understands the distinction between the flood zone and the floodway. The
Yeah.
floodway is the actual like stream
The
bed.
floodways,
It's
the
the
orange.
The orange area.
And the flood zones, the yellow,
Yeah.
and the spring.
We have some buildings in the downtown, the Latches building, the Wilder building. There's some of these buildings here on Main Street, where Barrows and Fisher used to have their.
Seen this before?
And then also Arch Street, 11 Arch Street building, that are in the floodway. And so we wanted, we've kind of been approached to kind of think about whether or not having residential in a block building in the urban center zoning district could be useful for redevelopment or development of buildings in the downtown. It would be a departure, it is allowed under the National Flood Insurance Program. There are some, things in order to develop in the floodway you have to meet, and it's not an easy test, I don't think. I mean, it costs money to do it. The idea here, though, is that these are substantial block buildings. You've got, a lot of times it's the wall of the building or, some sort of wall. The mapping is maybe not the most accurate in these areas, and any residences that would be located in the urban center are on upper floors. So they're actually way up above the base flood, or the floodway.
But so the point would be though that the foundations of these buildings would be improved,
Yes.
like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, but to be clear, I mean,
Additional remedies other than what we were just talking about, the 2 feet and the removal of the basements?
well, I mean, the way that I took a chance at writing it, there's engineering techniques that can make the building the foundation structurally strong to withstand the flood forces.
Am I looking at the right section, 251H?
You should be looking at, it's on the 3rd page, it's 251.
H.
851 4, residential structures.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So this particular area kind of is a backwater, so where Arch Street is, that's kind of a backwater area of the Connecticut River, so it's not really having the highly erosive flooding that happens further upstream along the whetstone. What's happening there is it kind of backs into that area off of the Connecticut River, which isn't to say it doesn't have some high flood flows through there, but
Which building are we talking about here?
like the Arch Street area
Okay.
here.
Uh-huh.
The foundation and walls of several buildings are already in the floodway there.
Yeah.
So, you know, you probably couldn't encroach any further, but
I'm sorry to ask like maybe a stupider question, but what about under 4? I was just looking at VI under 4. What about commercial use? Don't some of
Commercial-
these buildings have commercial use on the ground floor? So it's saying there's
Yes.
no use besides parking and storage.
well, you wouldn't.
Well, that's
yeah,
the
I mean,
basement,
this-
right?
Yeah, this would be the basement.
Oh, this is the basement, okay, so
So
I am
the Latches
confused.
used to have that restaurant
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah.
And that's not a permitted use.
That latch is part of the building. That
Yeah, that's all in the back there, and no.
That was in the back.
That got flooded.
It did.
yeah.
You did, yeah.
Yeah. That's a historic building. I mean, so there is some provisions for historic buildings. We could move in a direction that actually would say, well, you also have to meet these certain performance standards for historic buildings, where, you know, maybe you wouldn't be locating uses like that down there.
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess from a philosophical standpoint, and I don't know if I should even be getting into this, so stop me, but I feel like I don't know what the difference is between if you're having parking versus storage versus a bar in the basement.
Well, human habitation.
I don't,
Is
li-
the-
I
is
hope
the
they aren't
difference.
living in the bar.
Well,
I mean,
they're there.
It's temporary.
Yes,
They
so
can get out.
storage can get wrecked, that's a cost. Cars can get wrecked, that's a cost. But if someone's in there and it's flooding, they could be harmed.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because this is the flood regulations are actually part of the flood insurance program. So it's an actual insurance program, and what they care about is not just human life, but insurable risks. So they don't actually insure anything that's stored below base flood elevation in the basement. So there's no loss to the NFIP if that gets flooded. Businesses, they insure that's a loss. So it's not just the risk for them, it's also just the insurance.
It's their
risk.
liability, yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is, you know, this part of the whetstone is also very highly channelized, so it's not like the upper reaches where it's kind of trumping its brook, you know, moving around in sort of a stream channel.
So
This
the-
is kind of like in a chute at this point. It's kind of.
The channelization
You can still move,
creates more force.
Yes.
And there's also, is there kind of a interaction between the whetstone coming in and the Connecticut coming in that goes? Like the
I've
back,
not heard of
the
that, the backwater effect of the Connecticut where it kind of backs up in here. I'm not aware of that happening. Do you know about the flow
I don't know, but
dynamics
if it
there?
were gonna happen, I guess it would happen right about here.
Yeah, so in that lower part, the flood elevations are actually determined by the flood level of the Connecticut rather than the flood level of the whetstone, which would be lower.
The Connecticut would be lower.
The Connecticut is higher there because of the impoundment. If it were just the whetstone that wasn't flooded, it would be a lower, lower elevation. Down towards the end where the railroad bridge is.
Okay, so C is the standards that would have to happen in order to allow this?
Yeah, and attempt at some standards.
Yeah.
Because we're only talking about urban center right now.
Yes.
Yes,
That's it.
that's it.
Residential and just urban center.
Residential in a block building, yeah.
And what do you mean by block building?
You know, it's kind of multi-story, kind of built to the entire,
Yeah, and
Parcel.
I see this as being obviously a city block.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily see this as being a city block. Or this, number 36.
Number 36 is
What is that?
Whetstone Station,
Okay.
but it's out anyway. I wouldn't consider this a block building.
Yeah,
I would consider, the Latches as a block type
right,
building.
and
It's,
I would see
really
like 35.
Yeah, 35, 39. I agree, 11 is not a block building now, but
Mhm.
it could be redeveloped as part of a larger building
Creating a block.
or, yeah.
It's the term that's used in the downtown design guidelines.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of how we defined the urban center, actually. Well, the lower part of Main Street is kind of the block, in the block form.
Okay. Do you want us to decide on this now? Do you
No,
want us to
I
think
think,
about
I
this
think you should
now?
think about it. I
Okay.
mean, I think there's gonna be questions that come up and,
Yeah.
All right, we all promise to think about this?
One question I have about it is there's going to be additional development of new buildings based in this. What's the impact going to be on the direction of the flooding zone and the floodway?
well, that's part of the study that they need to do. and
Okay.
That they would need to be able to satisfy that there is going to be no
Right.
downstream effect.
Or, yeah. are
Or
there
to the
des-
neighboring park.
Or are there design opportunities within the block building, like they're doing in Portsmouth, that allow for floodwaters to pass through the building?
That's it. I'm
Like, is that
surprised
allowed in the block?
That's encouraged in any other flood ordinance that I've ever seen. Because the force is passed through.
Probably have to speak with an engineer about that. Or see what they're
It's a
doing in
cool idea
Portsmouth.
what they're doing in Portsmouth. It's
Yeah.
great. I mean, it's ocean flooding. Ocean estuary.
Yeah.
So there's one more thing that you want to accomplish this evening, so.
Municipal planning
Yes, I would like a motion supporting an application for a downtown design plan.
And we talked about that at the last meeting, right?
And it's focused on the infrastructure and place-based design
Yep.
rather than,
Yep, transportation. I mean, there's still gonna be all the public outreach and kind of creative placemaking pieces to it, but in terms of the master plan, yeah, we'll be looking at infrastructure, the transportation connections, and the public spaces, and, even kind of some of the smaller, possibly private, kind of private little spaces. that are-
Spaces.
Yeah. Little parks, so that's,
Great.
can I
Well,
move that?
yes, please.
I propose we have a motion to approve a municipal planning grant application for the downtown master plan.
I will second it. Would you like to second it?
Yes.
All in
She
favor?
can second it. Oh, in favor, yes.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
So when will our next meeting be?
October. October 1st.
It's
Wow.
unlikely I will
Unlikely
be
you'll be there.
there.
It's
Um,
possible I won't be there.
But it's possible, a chance to reflect on these things and some of
Yeah,
my
well,
thoughts.
feel free to-
Yeah, and questions.
that'd be
Stay in
great.
touch.
I will try to do that.
How's October 1st looking for other people? Actually, I'm at a conference that day. Okay, I'll be back from the conference.
Oh.
That's fine.
You won't be too tired?
Okay. No. Do
You should just come to
That's okay.
Keene for our conference.
you have one that day?
The
Is that when you're
Thursday
going
and
to
Friday
Maine?
before.
No, I'm not going to Maine. You going?
Nope.
Not going up to Maine.
There's a planning conference in Maine. That's end of September,
It's so
right?
far away. There's a radically rural conference in Keene on the 27th and 28th.
This is the Vermont Council on Rural Development Conference. It's at Castleton State. I'll be back.
Are there APA planning credits?
I don't think so. I'll let you know.
No, I won't be there.
All right, so October 1st,
Okay, great.
we'll have a lot. Okay. So do we want to adjourn?
Anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you. You may.
Thank you.
Decorate the baby's room with that?